Well, hello, hello. It's the Japan Zoominar from UC San Diego. I'm Ulrike Schade, Professor and Director of the Japan Forum for Innovation and Technology here at UCSD. This event finds you at GPS, the School of Global Policy and Strategy, where we have a large number of faculty and more than 400 students, 8 degrees, including a Master of International Affairs with a Japan specialization. If that's at all of interest, either contact me or look us up at gps.ucsd.edu. And JFIT is our Japan Center where we do a lot of fun things, and that you can find at jfit.ucsd.edu. Our events are recorded. This includes today's. So what that means for today's Zoominar is that you should, by all means, feel free to type any questions you might have into the Q&A box. I will refer to you only by your first name because of the recording. And that's in a way the bad news. The good news is that we have a JZ gallery on our website. And so you can find links to past events, including this one, on that website as well. So we've got our fall 2024 schedule all lined up. Of course, today we're going to talk geisha, as you know. So I look forward to having Jen here, who I'll introduce momentarily. Mark your calendars. We have on October 8th, Kore-eda, who is following Japanese elections, maybe more than anybody else in this country. And he's going to tell us what to expect, what with the kerfuffle in the LDP, and Noda-san was just announced as the candidate for the DPJ or whatever that party is now called. So Ko will explain all of that to us. On October 22nd, we'll have Rachel Denito from University of Oregon, and we're going to go to the movies. Rachel has just published, co-edited a book on eco-disasters in Japanese cinema. So mark your calendars on that. That's in 4 weeks from now. And then after our election here, we'll have Philip Lipsky from the University of Toronto and the University of Tokyo come and talk about Japan in the international order or some such title. Okay, so today we're going to go and discuss the magical mystery tour of Maiko food on Netflix. And so I'm going to stop my share here, and Jen Bardsley is with me, so which is very exciting. There she is. Hi, Jen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Hi, Eureka.
So it's wonderful to have you. Let me introduce you. I'm sure many people have looked up your CV on our site, but so Jen Bardsley is a professor emerita of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She earned her MA and PhD in East Asian Languages and Culture from UCLA, so that's a good school, right up the street from us. There was also a BA in Dramatic Arts from UC Davis. So I think we might get a taste of that a little bit. She then was an assistant professor at Wake Forest for a while before she joined UNC in 1994. She has won many honors and awards and has written many books. Her PhD thesis, Jen, so maybe we can get there too later, was on new women in the Taisho period. And one of your books was actually on the blue stockings in Japan and these new women essays. But the ones that maybe are more recent are the Women and Democracy in Cold War Japan. And then, of course, this one, Maiko Masquerade, which we will talk about today. And then there are also co-edited volumes, one of which is this fabulously interesting book, Manners and Mischief, that you co-edited with Laura Miller, who was on our Zoominar before. So if you're interested in the Hello Kitty portion of this, you may want to look for Laura's Japan Zoominar. There's also a book on bad girls in Japan, and in a way, that's what the Maiko Masquerade is all about, right? So there's also lots of chapters in this book, by the way. You got me, Jen, with the Oyaji chapter and the behavior of the old guy and the communism. So it's wonderful to have you. It's great to have such an accomplished scholar of Japanese culture and art and Japan studies, and and an expert on the Netflix series. So welcome, Professor Bardsley.
Thank you very much. So I share my screen now?
Yeah. Why don't you take us down to your, observations of this Netflix show, I guess, and
Okie
what about
dokie.
the Maiko?
And I just wanted, before we start, to thank you, Ulrika, for this kind invitation. I've been watching these Zoominars all summer, and I learned so much about a lot of books very fast. It's such a contribution to Japanese studies. So really, thank you for it.
Thank you.
Okay, now I shall share. Let's see. Share.
Yeah, that's happening. Looking good.
Yeah. Oops. One
Perfect.
up. There we go. All
Can you
righty.
turn the slideshow on? Yeah, there you go.
You
Perfect.
can see it?
Yep. Excellent.
Perfect. Okay, and thanks everybody for coming. So for this Zoominar, we're going to take a magical mystery tour of Maiko foods by exploring the 2023 Netflix series, The Makanai, Cooking for the Maiko House. And Makanai, by the way, refers to in-house cook at the Maiko House, and you see one of the girls there, that's the cook. It's a tale of two girls who come from northeastern Japan to Kyoto to become Maiko, but one becomes the cook. It's led by Japan's famous film director, Kore-eda Hirokazu, and it's based on a very popular girls' comic by Koyama Aiko, and we'll talk about both. So, my goal here today is to give you an inside track to the show's comedy. We're going to see a lot of sweet moments, uncover some mystery foods, and even laugh at brain-eating zombie Maiko. They're fictional. We will discover real life, though, food experts in Kyoto, and we'll learn why almost nothing terribly dramatic happens in this show. I mean, it's not Shogun. But we might ask, what does this show sent to global audiences on Netflix communicate about Japanese culture? But before we dive right into the Maiko, let's begin by asking into the show. Let's begin with Maiko. What do Maiko do? Where do they live? How do they serve as Kyoto's mascot? In other words, let's take up the backstory that the Makanai kind of assumes you already know. Here you see a geisha, or a geiko, as she's known in Kyoto, standing between two Maiko. Their sartorial signs show their status. They represent a very small arts community in Kyoto striving to stay relevant in today's world. So the Netflix attention definitely helps, and no wonder that many from the community collaborated in its production with Kore-eda's invitation. So Maiko are literally dancing girls. They're apprentice geiko. Maiko study Japanese dance, music, and etiquette. They perform at public events, as you see here, and at tea house parties. This is the one I went to alongside geiko. Maiko are typically between the ages of 16 and 20. Their apprenticeship lasts about 5 years. Although girls come from all over Japan to Kyoto to try to become Maiko, few become a geiko. And a geiko is a fully fledged independent artist who can continue her career her entire life. Maiko training starts when girls are accepted by a yakata, or Maiko House, in one of Kyoto's 5 tea house districts. Now, the main action of the Makanai takes place in a fictional Maiko House built on a movie lot, but it's supposed to be set in the biggest district, Gion. It's run by 2 women addressed as mothers and has 4 Maiko sisters. Together with others in the household, they form a kind of family. Now, any of you who've been to Kyoto know that Maiko are most famous as the city's mascot. I mean, you see cartoon Maiko everywhere you go, and here are a few. We find Maiko as dolls, city posters, souvenirs, decorating all kinds of food packages, and atop are cappuccinos. Even Kitty-chan gets into the Maiko act in Kyoto. And for a fee, you too can cosplay as a Maiko, and that's very popular. So these cute Maiko invite play, but they also brand Japan's old capital itself as a female-friendly space, a girls' city. For example, let's look at this 2015 Keihan travel ad. Here, groups of Maiko are relaxed, chatting with each other, all dressed in gorgeous kimono. Notice that there are no men in this picture. Almost all public images of Maiko whether actual or fictional, display them largely with other Maiko and Geiko. And this emphasizes their appeal as inhabiting a special girl's world. But as recently as the 1950s, major Japanese films portrayed Maiko as victims. These movies saw Maiko as poor, abandoned by their families, and exploited by greedy managers. The 2005 film Memoirs of a Geisha, set in the 1930s, did the same. Kore-eda himself admitted that such movies even made him wary of taking on the Netflix project, since all he knew about Gion was what he'd learned in Mizoguchi's films. However, his extensive research into today's Maiko world, interviews with Maiko, Geiko, and Makanai, male dressers, all these interviews made him realize how much things had changed and changed for the better, and he took on the project. He does include male characters in the series, but they are all kind, gentle souls, part of the community. Today's Maiko then represent innocence, girlishness, but also hard work. Maiko stories, which are written almost exclusively by women and produced in the 2000s, celebrate the Maiko as a very enviable figure. They praise her kindly managers and clients alike. They emphasize that unlike Maiko victims of the past, today's Maiko have freely chosen their arts vocation. And this is the world that the Makanai and the comics take up. But because of all the celebrity attached to this role, Maiko can report feeling pressure to become the perfect Maiko, the Maiko Rashi, or Maiko-like Maiko, a Maiko worthy of Kyoto tradition, a Maiko who's walking on the streets of Kyoto and everybody would say, that's a Maiko. So this leads many Maiko to report feeling like they have two separate identities. There's, of course, their ordinary teenage self, but there's also this perfect Kyoto Maiko that they're trying so hard to embody for the public, which can sometimes feel like a masquerade. So Koyama's comic plays with this gap, focusing, though, almost entirely on the Maiko's backstage life in the Maiko House. And here in the Maiko House, although still in their formal hairdos, which are changed once every 10 days, the Maiko can relax into their ordinary girl selves and wear casual clothing and even get mad when somebody steals their pudding. Koyama draws backgrounds in great detail, and she has images of Maiko and Kyoto scenes that are absolutely lovely. She draws the backgrounds quite accurately, but she always cartoons the characters and she kind of cartoons the food. And here's Kyo, frame by frame, active in her kitchen. It has a good sense of motion in this manga. The ambience in the manga is what makes Koyama's Maiko series connect two different manga genres. On the one hand, it's a food manga with many scenes taking place in the cook's kitchen. We see Kyo frame by frame, chopping, grating, simmering, sauteing, and boiling. But it's also a healing manga that soothes the reader by producing a calming sensory experience within a pretty environment apart from the real world outside. Nothing terrible will ever happen in this world. So in many ways, Netflix Makanai remains true to both these genres. That's why it's such a charming show with lots of close-ups of food preparation and relatively little dramatic action. Okay, so let's go to the Netflix show. As I mentioned, the Makanai follows a year in the life of two 16-year-old girls, best friends from childhood, who leave their snowy home in Aomori to move to Kyoto to become Maiko. The girls take up residence in a very lively Maiko house with quite a number of Maiko in Gion. Although Sumire quickly excels and becomes the Maiko Momohana, her clumsy pal Kyo fails at dance. Luckily, though, Kyo wins the position of Makanai for her skill and joy in cooking. The girls remain fast friends, each on the path most suited to her talents. Most importantly, Kyo transforms that Maiko house into a real family, a cozy girls' world, too, of home cooking and shared meals that inspires everyone else to find her own true path. So if you're a fan of Japanese TV shows on Netflix, then you know that there are more and more of them all the time. But what makes the Makanai stand out among all these is the fame of its director, Kore-eda Hirokazu, seen here. And he worked with 3 other junior directors. But it was his leadership as showrunner and head director that brought Makanai critical attention abroad. Because as we see in and the Koyama's Maiko world would seem to fit perfectly with Kore-eda's interest, because as we see in Shoplifters and some of his other famous films, Kore-eda too explores bound families. That is, families bound not by blood, but an assemblage of individuals who choose to form a household, who choose their family, much like the Maiko House. Kore-eda too tells stories about ordinary people doing ordinary things, zooming in on the small details of daily life. And he does this in the Makanai. Although Kore-eda supports Gion, he's a new fan, he says, he did not want to represent the Maiko House as pure and dreamlike, like the manga does. So he decided to add characters to Koyama's story that questioned some of its customs and voiced concerns, a slight critique. For example, he has Sumire's father, pictured here, confront her Yakata mothers, asking about potential sexual harassment or involvement with alcohol. Well, they convince him that Maiko are highly protected. In the end, the father is won over by his daughter's improved manners, hard work, and her skill in dance. And you see him pictured there, awed by his daughter's dance. He emerges as very proud of his Maiko daughter. The scene stands in for the Gion too, reassuring viewers of its own respectability and artistic goals. And it was Kore-eda's decision to have the geisha mothers be the ones that were sending this message. Okay, now to the food stories, the magical mystery tour. And the magic all starts in Kyo's kitchen. It's an old style, unpretentious space that Kyo adores. As a keen observer of everyone in the household, Kyo knows just when members need encouragement, and she knows the perfect food to whip up just for them. Other characters describe how Kyo's most ordinary foods, like onigiri balls, are different somehow, rice balls, that is. Her simple food makes them feel somehow nostalgic, somehow content, and somehow even healed. Here, one Maiko enjoys a kind of French toast that Kyo makes one early morning to satisfy the Maiko's hungry, homesick heart. The Maiko feels homesick for her younger sister and the times they shared food, feeling nostalgic. She feels inspired to think about her own true path because Kyo has clearly found hers. So Kyo's kitchen is a place, a catalyst of conversations and human inspiration, thinking about true paths. Much of the humor in the Makanai, as in the manga, it's quite gentle. It comes from the contrast between the Maiko's public persona and her inner girl cravings for ordinary foods. On their days off, when they can let their hair down and wear street clothes like any other young person, the Maiko head straight for the foods usually off limits to them. So here we see them chomping into burgers at McDonald's after their New Year's holidays back home. In one scene, this humorous contrast between her public persona and her girl self occurs only in the English subtitles, not in the Japanese ones or in the dubbed English version. Here we see 3 Maiko chatting about special Maiko sandwiches, but they continue this conversation even when the camera moves to focus on another character. But the subtitles in English continue the funny conversation that takes place off screen. And here's what it is. One Maiko chastises another, saying, "You said you were going out for fruit sandwiches," an appropriate feminine Maiko treat. "But then you came back with a beef bowl, a fast food associated with hungry men." Beef bowl places are so gendered masculine that lots of women don't feel comfortable going there. So it's the last place you'd see a Maiko. But you only get this joke if you see the Makanai with the English subtitles. Throughout the series, the Makanai teases fans to do their own detective work beyond the screen. Episodes typically give just enough clues to send curious viewers searching. What is the food? For example, when Kyo visits the former Makanai, the former cook, to make her lunch, we observe that Kyo brings a food gift. The old woman happily opens the gift, placing a portion, here she is, on the family altar as she says, Kyo-chan, you were kind enough to bring mame mochi from Futaba. But we never see the mochi itself. And what is it? And where is Futaba? Well, if you search online, we see that Demachi Futaba is a Kyoto shop. It's over 200 years old, and it regularly has long lines of customers waiting for up to 30 minutes a day for its mame mochi, a kind of rice cake with salted black beans filled with red bean paste inside. Surely Kyoto insiders would catch this reference, but the rest of us? In another episode, there's an eccentric dance teacher, and she has a fit when her stash of langue de chat runs out. So what are these? We never see them on screen. We only see this brief illusion. Well, going online and searching it out, we learn the teacher has a soft spot for Malebranche's langue de chat cookies, produced in Kitayama, Kyoto, and made with uji-grown matcha and white chocolate. And you can even see a beautiful ad video for these. But sometimes the clues are just insufficient to track down the food. Like, what was the hard candy that Kyo shared with Sumire and another trainee? And it's actually quite a long scene. They unwrap it, they chew it, they go, oh, that's so sour. But since the hard candy is neither named or shown, we might guess that it's from an old candy shop in Gion, but we can't know for sure. So as you see, lots of this magical mystery tour here happens off screen and online, and fans go searching. Fans in Japan and abroad have responded to the comic and the Makanai series by making the dishes, then posting their videos and recipes online. Offering explanations in English, Just One Cookbook, the California-based website hosted by Nami Chan, offers recipes for 30 of the series dishes, adding gorgeous photos, how-to videos, helpful cultural notes, and describing in which episode each of the dishes appears. In March 2023, Just One Cookbook held a cooking challenge, inviting viewers to enter their own efforts to copy Makanai dishes, and they received 212 recipes. Okay, the next story is kind of a carnival story. It's one of the most fun ones in the Makanai. But to understand the story, we must know about two Maiko customs. The first is the Setsubun Carnival, and the second is about dining out. Setsubun is the February holiday marking the end of winter and the beginning of spring. During the day in Kyoto, Geiko and Maiko participate in shrine festivities. But at night, Gion and other districts come alive as Geiko, and in some cases, even their clients, appear transformed by playful disguises. You may see samurai, you can see ballerinas, characters from famous films, anime, and manga. And in this comic, the geisha Momoko has costumed as an ancient Japanese Buddhist monk, as you see. But in Makanai, Momoko decides that, hey, this year, she really loves monster movies. She wants to use that. So she decides she will break the rules by making Maiko, not Geiko, the stars of her zombie skit. But we might laugh when we see where Momoko starts getting her ideas for the zombie skit. It's a posh restaurant. The scene also depicts Maiko Sumire's first Gohan Tabe experience. So what's that? Maiko and Geiko enjoy such invitations to fine restaurants by regular clients. The clients cover all the dinner expenses and the costs of the Geiko and Maiko's time. We call this Gohan Tabe or dining out. Here we see the event taking place at an upscale restaurant with an intimate, low-lit atmosphere. It's quite elegant. Opera music plays elegantly in the background. Sumire, though, feels totally out of place. She's never been in a restaurant like this, and she panics at the sight of the fancy menu, so she orders exactly what Momoko chooses. When Momoko's roe arrives, we see how elegantly it is served in a hollowed-out orange with its top cut kind of tilted to the side, but Momoko fixates on it. Yes, she thinks, this is how brains would look. And then when Momoko fixes Sumire's fallen kanzashi hairpin, inspiration strikes again. Using the Maiko's hairpin would be the perfect way to destroy the brains of zombie Maiko, the only way to kill them in her skit. Momoko holds the pin up, exclaiming, this will do it. The opera music in the background crescendos at this point. It's Queen of the Night from Mozart's Magic Flute. The queen is the villain in the opera, who sings ominously at this point. Again, something that adds to the scene if you look up this opera reference. Well, her skit's quite a success. Maiko of the Living Dead. The carnival scene really brings a lot of fun to the Makanai. I think the directors wanted to really break through this kind of calm, soothing world. Okay, but let's end our magical food tour with one of the show's sweetest tales, one that shows a hidden reality in Kyoto. So when Sumire gets sick, Kyo sets out to learn how to make real Kyoto-style kitsune udon, a noodled soup with fried age. This is because she learns that Kyoto people prefer to eat udon when they don't feel well. So this takes Kyo on a journey through a web of Kyoto food experts. It begins one bright morning as she heads not to the supermarket, but an old-fashioned shopping arcade at Demachi Masugata. And if viewers go to Kyoto, they can easily replicate Kyo's journey. So this first shop, a tofu shop, has a friendly expert who knows Kyo by name, and he gives her tips on how to make the fried tofu sweet and fluffy. He then directs her next to the Tanaka Katsuobushi shop. It's an actual shop in Kyoto where the grumpy shopkeeper, and here it's an actor who plays this grumpy fellow, and this man explains the type of bonito flakes used in dashi broth and why it changes with the season. As the camera zooms in, Kyo is captivated by these delicate shavings and excitedly samples them. And this is a picture of the shop. But the old man is horrified when Kyo suggests that she'll buy powdered seaweed for the broth at the supermarket. So he guides Kyo to the Okadaya, drawing her a map. Again, it's a real Kyoto shop here, where a kind woman, who I think is the actual owner, encourages Kyo's interest in making authentic Kyoto dashi broth. She suggests using a high-quality kelp known for its rich umami flavor. Back in her kitchen, armed with her new ingredients and new knowledge, Kyo prepares the kitsune udon, topping it with green onions and ginger. When Sumire finally tries it, Kyo's efforts shine through. Sumire gulps it down, feeling healthier already. Thus, at the end of the day, Kyo serves Sumire a bowl of noodles, but it's more than a bowl of noodles. It's noodles rich with history, an almost magically healing dish she could only create with the collaboration of Kyoto shopkeepers. And we really get a sense of how friendly this is, how they all know each other, how they're welcoming Kyo into their circle. But we also get a sense that if this isn't protected, it could fade. So what do you think the Makanai communicates about Japan's food culture and to Netflix's global audiences? Where does the magical mystery tour of Maiko Foods take you on screen and beyond? TV critics who most enjoyed the Makanai praised its food, its authenticity, the woman-centered world at its core, and the idyllic TV escape created. But I think the more we know about Maiko and the Kyoto foods displayed or alluded to in the Makanai, the more we enjoy its magical mystery tour. And I have to thank Nancy Stocker for inspiring me to work on the Makanai, and this will appear in her edited book on Japanese food cultures. Okay, thank you. I will stop share now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow. You brought up some of the scenes that also just jumped at me.
Oh, really?
Watching this. Yeah. So the one with where she goes to the stores. And I also thought that the kombu-ya-san, that is the real owner.
Oh, is it really?
I think so.
Oh, yes.
I think so, because she was not an actress.
woman.
Yeah, the woman. So,
Yeah.
so Well, one factual question in one of the early slides where you introduced the original manga that then became this movie. Did I read this right? That there are 3.5 million readers of this manga?
Yeah, yeah. That there have it at least it sold 3.5 million copies, and it's I can get one here. It's a
3.5
very
million.
cute little pretty book. And this is volume 27, which just came out this month.
So what is the we'll talk about, and we actually already have questions come in on our fascination with this, but what is the Japanese fascination with the Maiko?
I looked at some of the responses. I read it most thoroughly, volumes 1 through 8, because I published my book in 2021. But a lot of the people said they liked it because it was cozy. It made them feel easy. It was pretty. The people that didn't like it say, what's the big deal? This is just a housewife's shopping day. So it really appealed to the people that just like to kind of get into the quality of relaxation. And some people that I talked to that were Japanese also felt that the Makanai did that too. As one woman said, well, it's delicious.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no plot, right? As you as you mentioned, there. I mean, something. So they're themes.
There's little
right? So there's
things,
love, there's food, there's friendship, there's aging, there's young, there's careers, there's um out of wedlock daughters.
right, right. But no great, we're not moving to any big crescendo.
Yeah, so that's actually was my question. Okay, so where's this going? But it's going nowhere, right? And you mentioned earlier, and as we were waiting for the time for our show to start, that that Kyo, the Makanai,
right,
does not get older through this manga series. So she's 16 all the way through.
Yeah, even though she must be literally getting older when in this latest volume, so this is 7 years into the series, brand new trainees to the Maiko House say, well, who's that kid? Oh, you mean she's the assistant to the Makanai, or she's the mother's real daughter? But no, she's Kyo. You'll get to know her. And yet her friend Sumire goes on gradually becoming more of a young woman as she progresses through the Maiko apprenticeship. And I think the big question is whether, or I kind of feel like she will become a geiko, but there's also a romance brewing with her old boyfriend, or also a child friend in Aomori. So my sense is that the series will end soon after Sumire becomes a geiko, because all of these Maiko stories do. And it's kind of like you get married, to Prince Charming. So there may be a geiko for a little bit, but I really doubt it would continue a long time with her as a geiko as an adult.
So can we talk about Kyo a little bit more? So I love the way you set her up, because she's basically she becomes the soul of the place.
Yeah.
And there are so many rigid rules of what the Maiko can do. They can't go to a convenience store. So Kyo says, okay, I'll make you caramel pudding. No problem. Right? So there's a solution to this. I can make it for you. Or, that sort of thing. So she becomes sort of the warm mother, because the actual mama-san are pretty cold.
Yeah, and they have to kind of run the house, and they're made to be a little crazy, to a little ditzy. But and then there are some of the characters say, oh, Kyo, you're just like a mom.
But she never eats her own food.
Yeah. Yeah, you were mentioning that.
Yeah, so
she always makes it, and she sits there and she's so happy with other people.
Right. Her role in life is to make other people happy, and there's this warmth that comes from her. But there's also, she's clumsy, and she has these dreams, and she falls out of her bed and so forth. So she's this tomboy in some ways, but then she is this mother. And then she treats the food with such respect. So there's this one scene where she makes the caramel pudding or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mentioned that scene. And she cuts bread. When I cut bread, I take a knife, I cut the bread.
Yeah.
He goes and very respectfully, almost like, sumimasen, and then cuts through the bread. And then I'm not much of a chef, but I would just cut the bread and put it in the thing and put whatever goes on top. But she cuts it in the exact equal 16 parts.
Right. And you know what? I've been looking online, some of the fans that make like a tiny egg salad sandwich. And she has the kind of music you can't see her face, but she does exactly what you're talking about. This very precise, very slow, very even, kind of tempered, and seems very delighted to do just that.
So can we go move away a little bit from the Netflix doing this? Although
Sure.
there's also an interesting question of why Netflix is doing this. But is it true? I mean, is the characterization of the Maiko world? You've written a whole book about
Yeah.
Maiko, right? So and the manga is in here a little bit, uh,
Right.
because you published this. You wrote this probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So
Yeah.
it says 2021. Um, but did they take liberties there, or is this actually a fairly fair
Oh.
description of how the Maiko actually live?
Well, it's really interesting because so much of it takes place backstage where the Maiko are just acting like ordinary girls. So it portrays ordinary girls in a very believable way. And you see them going off to lessons, and off to the tea house parties, but you never see them really working as Maiko. So Maiko do a lot of work as boosters for Kyoto, talking with students on high school field trips, performing at shrines, doing commercials, store openings, and then these evening parties, and then all this dance practice. And so you really don't get a sense of how much work being a Maiko is. Just it's out there somewhere.
So as you all know, I'm a business scholar.
Yeah.
I'm out of my depth here, but this resonates with me because I see a lot of parallels in this training program.
Right.
So it's very regimented. I mean, they have to get up and then have to do the dance thing, and if they're not doing the move just right, then they get scolded, and then they have to do this and then the other thing. And as Maiko, they basically have no. They're not supposed to have a personality. They're not supposed to have their own wishes. They're just going with the program, right?
Right.
And
They're
then
supposed to portray being a Maiko girl.
and they can't have a cell phone, they can't do this and can't do this. And so it reminds me a little bit of not only salaryman training,
Yeah.
but also Yakuza training and sumo training.
Uh-huh.
Because and kindergarten for that matter, because in all of those situations, the onboarding is a 2-year process where basically you're a gopher. You do how you're told, you shut up, you just practice. And there's a mindset around learning. So in sumo, they have to cook these big dishes for the actual sumo, right?
Yeah.
And the Yakuza, I guess, have to clean the house or
Huh.
one mochi of the
Uh-huh.
of the higher ranked people. And so there are some parallels, I think, in the regiment around this. So why is this so regimented? It's supposed to be an art form, right? It ends as
Yeah.
an
And
art,
I
but it
think,
starts in this straitjacket sort of, you must do this, you must do that.
yeah. And sometimes I wonder to what extent that might be like all these. I read a lot of Japanese books by people in the Maiko, in this whole community, and some were elders saying, here's how we train people. And I think a lot of the strictness that's communicated is in part to assure people that this world preserves Japanese etiquette and it's not a sex trade. So the more they emphasize this strictness, the farther away it is from this. And you wonder if somebody could keep up with quite that much strict training. But I don't know. I know from what I've read. But I was really struck in these terms, in terms of what we're saying of how the person's supposed to perform, how they're supposed to do etiquette, how they're supposed to eat communally, how they're supposed to use this different kind of Japanese. And the idea is that living in this Maiko house, which is kind of a Netflix term for the Okiya, is a sort of on-the-job training that you're constantly told, corrected, and you're supposed to model yourself after others. And I think that fits in other Japanese worlds. But I was really interested too in this. There's a scholar named Cynthia Dickel Dunn who wrote Bowing Incorrectly, a chapter in a book on Japanese at work, where she talked about corporate training programs and how much they emphasize performance and kind of an aesthetic performance. So these trainees were taught all these corporate kata forms, like, how to speak, your voice, your gestures, your use of space. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds just like the Maiko world. So there are these connections.
So one of my favorite characters, so as you know, and we've had a side conversation about the tight loose
Yes.
framework, which is about Japan being actually a fairly tight culture where there's a high degree of consensus of what the right behavior is and quite some intensity about enforcing that.
Right.
There's a character in this Maiko house, and I forget her name, the one who gets married and then comes back with a short red
Oh yeah,
hair.
she's added. She's not in the
Ah,
not in the manga, but she's
I for-
lots of fun,
I
right?
forget. So she's a loose character, like we would
Yeah.
call a loose cannon, right? That comes back into this house, and she's a little bit irreverent, and there's a booking mistake, and she kind of goes in and does this more like. It's not an art, it's an entertainment. She speaks
Yeah.
out of order. So there's this loose character that comes into this tight environment. And wherever she is, I feel that she just points out to us just how tight this other stuff is.
Oh,
How,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so she shakes things up but she doesn't belong and it's not quite right
Yeah.
and nobody knows how to deal with her. And
And
it's a
she's
little
also
bit,
left her husband, right? I mean, she retired from the Geiko, this Maiko house as a Geiko who was pretty successful, to marry this man and move to Hiroshima where she lives with her mother-in-law and him. And then she can't stand, having to kind of be under the thumb of the mother-in-law, which sounds like a lot of old Japanese novels. So she says, I'm going. And even when her husband comes back to say, oh, won't you please come back? She says, nope. So she's very assertive, very kind of loudmouth. And I imagine that she works so well for the Makanai because she makes things happen. Because, having a soothing manga is one thing, but trying to make 9 episodes of TV where nothing happens. So she's a real delight to watch. And she even says, like, when Sumire is or other Maiko, they're up on that roof where they talk a lot. And she says, oh, yeah. And the teacher always, the dance teacher gets on you about lowering your hips, right? Just don't worry about it. They say it's for your own good, right? Don't believe them.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
so it's another person that pokes holes in things.
I'm wondering. So first of all, yeah, that's her role, right? So she's set up to be that, and it's fun for us because we come from a loose culture where we think that this
Oh,
things. I'm wondering whether for a Japanese person watching this, it's awkward.
I
And it creates
wonder.
this moment of ooh. So and then of course Kyo can come into this moment and just make a soup and then everybody's happy, right? Sort of
Yeah.
I'm
So it's always
characterizing this obviously.
restored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the sort of the person that sticks out, at least in the business world, there's often an uncertainty of how do we react to this in the right way.
Yeah.
This is not what we're trained to do, right? So now we have to react to this loose cannon, and
Yeah.
and
And
she,
she keeps pushing things. She keeps
yeah.
speaking very frankly. Yeah, you're right.
So
Um,
I don't know. So I would be very curious to hear how a Japanese person
yeah, would
would get
think. I mean,
that.
I think that, it'd be one thing to have her in there as fun because she's such a great comic character because she says all the unexpected, does all the unexpected things. She doesn't move gracefully. Um, but she's not your daughter. You know what I mean? She's the comic character.
So can we talk a little bit about your book, The Masquerade, right? The
Yeah.
Masquerade, or it's a sort of cosplay,
Yes.
sort of,
A
right?
kind of cosplay.
So these girls, when they're in the house, they let go, right? They eat McDonald's, as you pointed out, and they use their cell phones, of course, even though they're not allowed to go to the conveni and they're not allowed
Right.
to cell phone public.
Right.
So there is Honda and Tatemai maybe, or
Yeah.
a moment of theater and
Uh-huh.
moment at home. And so can you talk a little bit about I'm fascinated with this book, and I'm also going to come to the manners and
Very
history
nice. Thank you.
after that. But can you talk a little bit about the main thesis of this book?
Yeah, that because I think because of the Maiko's reputation in the past as this victim, that today's Maiko, in order to still be the mascot of Kyoto, certainly has to be pristine. So the idea is this image is representing a girl who works very hard. And in fact, she works so hard, she is kind of more Japanese, more artistic than the rest of Japanese teenagers or young people who are then portrayed as slackers, who really can't hack it. So the fact that she can do this, we should admire because it took so much work. But there's also the sense then in all this fiction that is that a real, what is she like off stage? So there's a feeling like it's so perfect it might be a masquerade covering a real self. And so lots of the stories play with that, like this manga. But there's also a light novel called Boy Maiko. There goes Chiyogiku. And Chiyogiku is a weekend Maiko. His mother owns a Maiko House and tea house. And to help her out one night when she doesn't have enough Maiko, he says, "Oh, Mom, I can do this." And he's a little junior high school boy whose voice has not changed yet. So his is totally a masquerade. But what's interesting is he's complimented by everybody on, "Wow, we've never seen such a perfect Maiko." And and then the only person near the end of the series who quickly understands that he is a boy dressed as a Maiko is a Kabuki Onagata, a female role player. And he's, kind of takes one to know one. And he uses this Kabuki rhetoric of that undergirds the Onagata is only men can create this ideal femininity. But he says to the little boy, just be yourself. So there's many ways in which they play with this, the idea that that this is such a kind of an icon, such a expected sense of what a Maiko is, that there must be some distance between real people in this performance. Although then the idea is in the literature that when she becomes a geiko, she's internalized all this, then she should be herself.
So it's this is all very interesting. Right? So there's also this element of art where I've always been fascinated that Japanese art, whether that's, you mentioned the Onagata, right? So whether it's kabuki or ikebana or calligraphy, the first step of perfection is to do it exactly so. Right?
Oh,
That's the kata, right? So and you have
uh-huh.
a whole thing in this book about the kata and the manners and how you have to, do all of these things, and all hell breaks loose if you do it wrong. But in the arts, I think this is where maybe
Yeah,
a huge difference. So an onagata in the kabuki, the first step to claim is to do it exactly like the
yeah,
teachers used to do it. And then once they've arrived, then they can bring in this like mild variation.
yes,
Right.
yeah,
And we see that here in the micro training where they have to do it exactly so. And
yeah,
there's no room for
uh-huh.
variation in the early stages of the training. It's just once they become geiko,
Then,
then they can push the envelope of the art, so to speak.
and then they really
Right.
should, by that time it should be so internalized that then they add their own flavor and so forth. But it's kind of like I remember some, or even when I first learned ikebana, when you're an American kid and you first try this and the teacher puts these in and then they take the flowers out and they say, now you do it like this. And then they take the flowers out and then they put them in and you put them in again. And we're just so taught often as in the US that, well, to be creative, you have to design it on your own, And actually, I remember being with students, and an older Ikebana teacher was so used to teaching Americans who did this. And so she just kind of went with it. And she said, oh, that's very creative. You might do a little of this like here, but yeah, you've got talent.
So,
but it might be closer to learning piano or ballet.
Right? It starts with school and handwriting, and it has to be in that box. And you can't have your own handwriting until you actually have mastered the kanji box. So there's I really like this book about the kata, and then Laura, your co-editor, is a very funny last chapter on what happens if you violate the norms. And
the posters.
Really recommend it. So we have a few questions from the audience, and I want to bring. So a lot of folks have commented on the food aspect and how food is so much more than nutrition. She reminds us that it's also about culture and traditions and heritage, and this is celebrated in this series. Right? And what's interesting to me about that is that this speaks to Americans. I mean, is this Netflix show actually a hit?
I don't know. I don't even know if it's gotten a second season, but there was a lot of reviews of it, Hollywood Reporters, some of the newspapers, and I found some reviews in France and some in other Asian countries, in Singapore, US, but I could only find one newspaper article in Japan that was a review. So I don't know how popular it's been.
So early on in Europe, while you were still presenting, Marie-Louise actually had a question that I think is good to. She reminds us that isn't this an ideation of? Isn't this a little bit of a fetishistic, like an ideation of women in Kyoto? So can you talk a little bit more about this women thing? Because there's
this perfect kind of femininity,
or celebrating the woman geisha. So I think she's going back to this idea that you talked about a little later in your presentation about how this is no longer about prostitutes and red lantern or water trade or whatever the show, the misushobai, or it's no longer that. It's the whole thing is about bringing this back as an art form. But isn't that art form in itself?
And kind of, it's really, that's a really good question, why start doing this Maiko? Because Koyama did write another short manga series. I think it was set in the Meiji period. It was also a very soothing one that had some food, but this one was just a hit. And actually, I've met some people in the geiko world who know her and really approve of this. And I kind of wonder if maybe it was because it's such a pretty world, and it is a girls' comic, so it's in a girls' world, but it doesn't focus on adult women very much at all. The Netflix series has many more scenes with adults, but this is really the girls, and the girls do you learn a lot of things about kind of pretty customs, like the way the Maiko sends notes to the tea house lady, or the way they have these certain fans that you see all over Kyoto in June, these white circular fans with Maiko and Geiko names on it. So it's full of so much lore and prettiness. It's a very nice world to be in the manga. The Makanai, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, I got to see this. It's the latest Maiko product. It's for a global audience. And the music struck me as just so cute. And it could be so sentimental. And then only through going over it and finding all the food things that the little mysteries they put in and the kind of fun the directors had, then it seemed like a little more interesting show to me.
Yeah, I mean the I found actually initially I had a hard time hearing, but then I realized it's because I let the background chatter going,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It did something very interesting. The other thing that I think there is a theme, the love theme, like the love and marriage
Hmm.
and that is the guys keep coming back, right? There are
Right.
certain male characters that actually have a role in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
um,
true.
and there always is the so we know Kenta and so forth and so on. So we then the architect and so they're actually fixtures in this.
Hmm.
They're not the customers.
Oh, right.
Customers are irrelevant, right? So the customers are just
You
they pay for the
never
house, but
see a customer
the
except
guys
that
are fixtures.
client in the dine out scene.
So this is all, you know, it's amazingly interesting. The food thing, just to close that circle on the food and the
Yeah.
that they tell the story of the Maiko through the food is really such a brilliant way of weaving together. There's this thing about food in Japan, right? The home food, the hometown soba or the home
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
She wins this. She wants to win the bread baking machine, and she gets all the 10 coupons, and she wins the third prize, and the third prize is a box of apples from Aomori, where she's
Yeah.
from, and she goes, "Oh, okay, I guess it's apple pie." So,
Yeah.
so
Koyama's actually from Aomori, so she puts a lot of Aomori snacks and things. And she also gets very nostalgic, talking when I was a kid, we used to have this when it was cold, and builds a little story about that.
so it speaks to this thing that food as a hometown sort of anchor.
Yeah.
And even
Oh,
for people in Kyoto or Tokyo or Osaka or something, right? So they stick to their hometown apple is different from the other apples.
kind of too, like that dashi scene, it
Yeah.
was, well, in Kyoto, this is the way you make it. And don't just think you can take a recipe, but you really have to ask people and get the ingredients. And this is rooted in Kyoto, in this Kyoto network. But in the anime version of this comic, they really emphasize Japanese food, regional food diversity. So there's one anime episode where they have rice balls that Kyo makes, so onigiri. But then they go on and talk about the different ways of making the rice balls all over Japan, depending where you are. And they do that several times. And the anime almost seems for children to me. It's also NHK World, so it's meant for a broad audience. And it gives you the feeling that we're centered in Kyoto here, but we're really going to learn how rich Japan is in terms of its food culture.
It's fantastic. I could go on for hours, but the thing is, time is up.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
been the full hour,
Wow. Thank you.
so
That was
wonderful.
fun.
We have a lot of different questions, which I will share with you. Cody asked whether there's a way to watch this later, and yes, there is. If you missed the beginning, this episode has been recorded, and in about 10 days or so, we will have it on our website. And we'll see you in 2 weeks with Ko Maeda talking about politics. And in 4 weeks, we're going to go to the movies and look at eco disasters from Fukushima, well, actually starting with Godzilla and all the way to
Yeah, fabulous
the
book.
current disasters. And so we'll hope you'll be back. And Jen Bardsley in Chapel Hills, thank you so much for being with us here today. It was wonderful. I could go on
Thank you,
for hours.
Ulrika. I got so many
Wonderful.
more ideas of this show from your comments, things I hadn't noticed. That was so helpful. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you. And I will stop the recording here. Goodbye, everybody. Take good care.